bored Brits could be about to get a slight reprieve, as sources hint the PM may look to relax coronavirus lockdown measures sooner than expected. As Boris Johnson returns to work after a terrifying health scare in which he fought for his life in an intensive care unit after catching the deadly virus, he is looking to make a big announcement, it is rumoured. And that could be welcome news for Brits as they enter their 5th week on lockdown, for Johnson is thought to be readying to announce plans to ease some elements of the strict rules. May 7th is when the government is legally obliged to review the lockdown, but sources say the PM could modify the rules as early as this week. An ally of Mr. Johnson told the Telegraph, May 7th is the day when the government is legally obliged to review the lockdown measures, but if Boris wants to change the restrictions earlier than that, or at least announce something before that, then he could go sooner. Read more related articles. Read more related articles. Talking about lifting the lockdown is using the wrong language. We need to be talking about modifying the lockdown. There is definitely a sense that we could be doing more than we are at the moment in terms of people being to work, especially if they are working outdoors. Early last night, the PM was spotted arriving back at Downing Street. He plans to return to work today, and chair a first Monday morning COVID-19 meeting, just 2 weeks after he was discharged from St Thomas Hospital in central London. Read more related articles. Read more related articles. He reportedly discussed the idea of modifying lockdown rather than lifting it, and it's understood restrictions will stay in place even if workplaces and schools begin to reopen. A source has told the Daily Mail meanwhile that the PM and senior ministers could drop their stay-at-home slogan. They said, "We are moving on from stay at home." But that does not mean we are anywhere near going back to normal. We are all going to have to adapt to a new normal. The Prime Minister's big concern is avoiding a second peak, which would require a second lockdown. He is clear that we cannot afford to do anything which would mean losing control of the rate of infection, because that would mean more people dying. It would also mean a return to the lockdown, which would be damaging to public trust and terrible for business. His return to work comes after the Department of Health and Social Care today announced the daily UK death toll dropped to 413. However, speaking at the Scottish Government's coronavirus briefing, Scotland Health Secretary Jeane Freeman urged caution on the latest daily death figures, stressing deaths registered at the weekend tend to be relatively low. In today's press briefing, Professor Stephen Powis, National Medical Director of NHS England, repeated his plea to motorists not to breach lockdown rules after data showed traffic levels creeping up by 3% compared to last week. We need to ensure that this does not mean that we are not continuing to comply with the government instructions on social distancing, which are of course so key to ensuring that we get on top and control the spread of this virus, he said. He added mobility data from tech giant Apple also showed a little hint of more people walking and driving as more people requested directions online. And Environment Secretary George Eustice warned schools will have to adhere to social distancing measures should they reopen during the pandemic. Eustice said, Dominic Raab addressed this earlier this morning, and stressed the importance, that even as you start to consider steps such as that, reopening schools, it would still be important in such a setting to have social distancing measures. Also speaking in the government briefing, Professor Stephen Powis, the National Medical Director of NHS England, credited Britain's obeying the lockdown and social distancing measures for the apparent decline in new cases and a plateauing in deaths. However, Professor Powis said the lockdown has begun to pay off but warned cases could soar and there could be a second wave if Britons become complacent. Professor Powis said, all our efforts, hard though they may be, have begun to pay off. But he said it would only continue to pay off if we continue to comply with social distancing measures. Coronavirus outbreak. My fear, as the fear of all of us, is that those curves won't continue to be on a downtrend but will start to go in an upward trend. We are not at a point where any of us can be absolutely confident that that is not going to be the case. We want to avoid a second peak, we want to avoid a rise. He added, I can't emphasize enough that this is not the time to say we've done a good job.